Hello and welcome to a brand new episode. I don't want to say brand new episode because we've had a very long hiatus actually. But we're back, Box and One, Ron, Pramit, myself. I think last episode we did was the 2022 preview for the wildcard series for the Blue Jays. That's a long time ago.
Has it
So,
been that long?
yeah. We didn't do a single episode in 2023.
Ooh, that's a bad year.
Yeah.
That's a bad year.
I think the writer's strike impacted us as well, maybe. So,
Yeah. Pramit wrote all our material. He's the writer.
exactly. So he was on strike. So we couldn't do much. But we're back and we're very excited. Interesting day for the Raptors fans, Raptors themselves. Trade deadline, NBA trade deadline, no significant player move. There were a few movements as usual. Raptors made a couple of moves as well. So we'll just recap. But before that, intro.
It's so funny seeing that intro because it's so outdated now. I mean, the Joe Carter was already gone, obviously, but like Josie is gone. Who else was in there? Like
I was just thinking the same
Kawhi.
thing. I'm like, Altador is so dated now.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need to update it. Although those were very good times, and like considering where Toronto sports is now, I miss those days.
Yeah, me too.
I think every single Raptor is gone unless we got Boucher on camera.
Yeah. No, I don't think he's on there.
No.
Yeah. So everybody's gone.
Yeah.
Sad.
Time to update.
Sad.
Maybe.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I mean, we'll try to. I guess we'll try to make this more regular now that we're super excited about this trade deadline. Eh,
Yes. Finally, the tank job that we've been waiting for a long time.
Well, so is it the tank job that we've been waiting for?
I wouldn't call it a tank job. I would call it a rebuild because I don't know if this is the year they want to bottom out. So, and I don't think that they're going to go into next year expecting to bottom out for a pick. I don't think that's the plan because you're going to have year 4 Scotty. You're going to have quickly extended. You still have RJ. You have a lot of cap room you can play with and likely a better roster that's augmented around Scotty. So I think the expectation next year will be to be competitive. I don't think that they're truly tanking. Also because of the fact that they've identified Scotty as the guy they want to build around. So he's already into year 3. So I don't think they want to just rely on picks. I think the goal is younger players with upside and role players that you can add around him and re-augment that roster.
So let's recap the trades that they've made. Okay, so it's not a traditional tank job, but definitely they sold the big pieces, right? Kicked it off last year with OG moving to New York with Precious and Malachi. And we got a couple of good pieces back in return. So RJ Barrett coming back our way, Emmanuel Quickly. I think we got a second-round draft pick as well. And then in January, they moved Siakam to the Pacers for Bruce Brown, Kira Lewis Jr., Jordan Nwora. So again, the two big moves were already done. So today was more like just moving some of the role players they had. So early on, they moved Otto Porter Jr., Kira Lewis, whom they got in the Siakam trade, and one of those first-round draft picks, to Utah for Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji. So Kelly, so we've got a couple of Canadians now on the roster. And then later on, they traded away Dennis Schroeder and Thad Young for basically nothing because they acquired Spencer Dinwiddie and then promptly waived him.
Yeah.
So what do you guys make of all the moves so far?
Pramit, you go first because I got thoughts about everything in totality, but I don't know if you want to talk about today's moves first and then look at the bigger picture.
We'll go one by one in chronological order.
Yeah, okay.
I'll start with OG and I'll give a letter grade, give my thoughts, and then you can chime in and give yours.
Yep.
I give it a B+. I think Quickly was a really good ad. He's the kind of point guard that they've been lacking for a long time. He can finish at the rim, even though he hasn't done that much of that since he's been here. He can shoot. He's fast. He can create. He plays well off of Scotty. The defense hasn't been great yet, but I don't think anybody's defense has been good since the last month. And RJ has been better than expected. I mean, I know that he wasn't the most efficient player in New York, and there's concerns about the contract. But I mean, the Raptors couldn't score, and he can put the ball in the bucket and has done that well. They also offloaded 2 players they clearly didn't want to keep around. Precious and just whatever we saw in year one, the upside we saw, he just hasn't developed any further than that. And Malachi just has been glued to the bench from day one. So I think that it was time to move on. And they got a second round pick. Again, not a great draft, but it'll probably end up being pick 31. Because the draft is so lean, I know a lot of analysts are saying that they're probably better off getting a high second rounder than a weaker first rounder, because it's a little bit more, it's better for the cap situation, no guaranteed money. I give it a B+ because again, it was a really solid. I mean, for me to give a trade an A, I have to be blown away, and we weren't blown away, but I'm happy with what they did.
Yeah, I think I agree. Thinking back to when the trade was announced, I think initial thoughts, I was a little bit you know what? I was a little bit sour, and probably because it's the getting rid of OG aspect of it. You know, it's a shock when somebody who you've watched for so long and you've grown to really watch playing goes. But at the same time, when I thought about it, and we talked about it in our group chat, getting Quickly was big, and that second round pick. I know, like we constantly talk about how bad the draft is, but a low second instead of a late first is definitely better, like you said. And RJ is it's kind of that, you know, let's see what we can get out of it. So I like it. I'm probably a B, just because I'm a little bit cautious, maybe even B-. Just I'm a little bit cautious on what RJ ends up being. I have my concerns. He's been good, but he's also disappeared, which from everything we've seen and heard about him in New York, that was kind of the knock, is that he can have good games and then he can disappear.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think what we saw him do with Team Canada is a sign that there's more in there, and he was 3rd overall for a reason, coming out of a really good school. I don't know if the New York system was right for him. And ultimately it was Randall and Brunson that they were building around, and even I think sometimes Quickly got more touches than RJ did. So I think a part of that I'll chalk up to the system that he was in. And, you know, sometimes that happens. A good player just doesn't end up in the right place, and they need to move on. But he had a good year for them that year. First year they made the playoffs in 2021, in that pandemic year. And then he just kind of stagnated, but so far so good. But yeah, you have a point for sure.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the Pascal deal, but before we get into that, Azam, when you heard about the OG deal, and even we can kind of mix in the Pascal deal as well, what were your thoughts? Like, did like, was it a big thing for you? Like, did you care? Like,
yeah. So it's funny. I mean, Pranit and I were talking around that time, and we were thinking that, you know, if you had to keep one out of Siakam or OG, and given where they may be in a couple of years, it would make sense to probably keep OG around, right? Because he's the kind of a player you need once you're contending. Not that I was shocked, but I was still sad to see, because I mean, that's like the first, I don't want to say, but he was like the homegrown guy from the championship team. He had his like pretty good moments over his period. So I had come to enjoy, to be honest, that he was my favorite Raptor over the last maybe 5-10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it was tough to see him go. I suspect that once it was communicated to him that they were going to enter a retool or rebuild or whatever that may be, this probably wouldn't be the place you'd want to stick around to go through that. And given it's half a season of him, they get his bird rights, so there's a value there. But for half a season, I think that's really good value they got back. And they offloaded 2 guys they didn't want, and one of them
got traded again.
Moved, got traded to Detroit. So, and he was probably going to sign there anyways. So, given the relationship that OG, CAA, and Leon Rose, and Leon Rose's son being OG's agent, I think it was the fact that he was likely going to end up there, and they managed to get 2 good players from the Knicks, even if they were sort of being blocked by other players and were not quite being used to their full potential there. Like, they got 2 good NBA starters and a draft pick for OG, a guy that was going to leave, and 2 players they didn't want. I think they did quite well with it.
I agree. So we know he's signing in New York.
I would suspect. I wouldn't. Nothing is an absolute. I mean, who knows? Like, he's hurt now, and who knows? Like, he could come back and they have a terrible playoff run. But I would suspect that more likely than not, they will try to retain him.
Let's move on to the Pascal deal. That one kind of hurt me more for some reason. Should we run down what the trade was?
Go. Yeah, why don't we do that first?
Raptors get Bruce Brown, Kyrie Lewis, Jordan Nwora, 2 2024 first-round picks, a conditional 2026 first-round pick in exchange for Siakam and a future second.
So one of those 2 picks went to Utah today, right?
Yeah.
It was one of those. Okay.
Yeah.
Is the 2026 conditional?
That's what I'm reading.
Well, it's somewhat It's a protected pick. I think top 15 or something like that, right?
I don't know. We can check the details. We'll get our research team to check it. But I mean, even still, like, I thought
it's 1 to 4 protected.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a pretty. They're not going to, barring something like a disaster. It's they're not going to. They probably won't be in the lottery.
What was your letter grade on this one?
Oh, tough one. I mean, it's still kind of up in the air because we don't know what's going to happen with Brown.
Yep.
I was leaning towards a C- or D+.
No.
I'll give it a C- for now because there's still something that can be done with Brown, and we'll get into that later. They waited too long. I think that was obvious. I'm guessing that because he's the better player than OG, but because of the contract, that makes it harder for teams to fit in under their cap, especially with the new cap rules coming and him likely getting a max deal or close to it, that because of the first apron and the second apron, which end up being very restrictive, I don't think there were too many buyers for him at this point for half a season. So I think they waited too long. If it wasn't going to be last year's deadline, then the offseason, I think, was the time. And I mean, the 2 of the first rounders they got this year, again, as we've commented, it's a weak draft. So, and I think they did the right thing by moving one of them. So we'll talk about that later. They didn't get a good young player that they have like under control for a few years on a rookie deal. Like, that they can say, okay, this is the guy, he could become a good rotation piece, let him grow with this new core. They didn't get that. Nwora isn't as young as people think. He's a 25. I think he's older than Gary.
Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah, but he's had some upside. I mean, had some good games so far, but it's hard to gauge if it's just simply because of the fact that they had so many guys injured that he was getting shots and teams didn't respect him enough to guard him. Has had some decent shooting stats in the past, but again, you're going to have to, there's no guarantee you can keep him or want him, and you're going to have to give him an extension. And when you're still not quite sure what you're getting in. So Brown is the asset, and we need to see how that ultimately plays out. So for now, I'm giving it the C-, but if they end up not being able to parlay Brown into any useful deal later on, or they surprise us and make a deep playoff run and they keep Brown and he plays a big role next year, then okay, that could change the grade. But I would give it a C-. It could, with the potential to shift depending on how the Brown thing plays out, but disappointing nonetheless.
So for me, this was like instant reaction, and honestly, my I don't know that my opinion has changed on it. Instant reaction was like a D, and I'll give you two reasons. First reason is just from a passionate fan standpoint, is the fact that they didn't make this. Like, I get it. I get what I think Masai said, this team deserved another run last year, and he wanted to give them like the benefit of the doubt and let them go for it. I don't know what they were going for. So just the like you said it, just the fact that they waited for so damn long to make that deal, that really pissed me off. So that's the one reason that I give it a D. The second is because throughout all these talks about the Pacers, there was the Jarris Walker potential, which I would have like just something like not Kyra Lewis or Jordan Nwora, right? Like what are we really gonna do with them? When you look at this, it's like what are we doing here, guys? Like, I didn't mind the way, and this is just speaking as like somebody who's looking to be entertained. Watching that team with Pascal, look, I know they weren't going to contend seriously. Maybe they can get up to a 6 seed or something like that. I don't even know if they were that good, but I wanted to see what could have happened with Pascal on that team, just from I want to be effing entertained. I don't even know. Have we ever said if we can swear on this podcast?
I can probably not.
No, but seriously, like I just want to be entertained because it's been tough to watch. So for those reasons, and I know that's coming at it from an emotional point of view, but like those two first do nothing for me because I've said from like earlier this year, like picks this year are not going to do anything for us because it's such a bad draft. And sure, maybe we can find something. And I know now we got rid of one of those picks. And we can talk about that because I was listening to the Jazz podcast. We can talk about that one pick that we gave away. But I just, for me, D, and then seeing him in Pascal in a Pacers uniform, just it sucks. But I really want to see what happens with him and Halliburton once Halliburton's fully healthy.
You're not wrong. I think we may have said her by the time we realized that this thing was going to fall apart, and we heard people in the media saying, "Well, they should try to get Keegan Murray." We may have we may have been anchored to that initial trade idea, and we probably thought that we'd get more than we did. They waited, and I don't know. I don't quite know why they waited. I don't get it. And Masai getting all emotional, talking about how close he was to them. I mean, I know he got a lot of praise for that. I wasn't very happy with that because it's such a cold-blooded business that you have to be quick and decisive and not let your emotions get in the way. And I don't know if that was a smokescreen or if he really felt that way, but I wasn't pleased with that, and I hope that didn't result in this. But yeah, I mean, we didn't get a young core piece that could grow with the core, and it's too bad. And yeah, I mean, the picks aren't great either. So
yeah. Awesome. What did you think?
I think this, for me, it was more inevitable the way conversation was going. I mean, it's sad to see him go, but yeah, I agree. I think the return was so underwhelming that, again, going back to last year's trade deadline as well, when they really just didn't do anything except making an acquisition, had no idea what was going on. Like they were not going to win last year. They weren't supposed to be any good this year as well. Maybe potentially a play-in contender, but so I wasn't too sure why he wasn't moved early on. And again, I don't buy the argument about giving them like an opportunity and one more chance. I mean, I didn't buy the sentimentalism either, to be very honest. Like, I think this it's not like that veteran team where you want to give them one more shot, right? Like, this is not like
the Warriors,
the 2017 Jays.
Exactly.
Right. So, what were you trying to do with it? I really don't understand. But like I said, I mean, it didn't. Like, I was disappointed in the return. Sad to see him go, but I mean, for me, OG was a bigger deal because he was my favorite player.
Yeah.
What's that old saying? You're better off trading a player a year too early than a year too late.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You need to act. I mean, and even with Siakam, fine, you could like maybe give him a little bit more leeway to dictate where he goes, because at times, and I've read this with the Fred situation, he likely wasn't going to any of the teams that were making offers, he likely wasn't going to re-sign. He wasn't having a great season, and they didn't want to let like a quote unquote legacy player from that championship team end up in a place where he may not fit, which would affect his earnings potential in the offseason. So it was not the greatest of asset management in either case, but more relationship building. So we'll see if that comes back to benefit them later. If any of these, I don't know. I mean, I can't agree with that. I don't know.
I get where you're coming from, but like, this is one of those moments where I would have wanted the cold-bloodedness when they made that DeMar deal. And I know that was a completely different situation, but like, just when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, and to be completely honest with you, what pisses me off even more about this is when we look at the Jakob Poeltl deal, it makes it look even stupider now. And to be honest with you, they knew at that time, right? They knew that the draft was going to be weak. So I understand that they were kind of bargaining from that position. They were okay with giving it up. But now looking at it in the grand scheme of things, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
I can't disagree. I can even accept the Fred thing because I don't think anybody thought Houston was going to pay him $42 million.
No,
I can even accept them just like waiting it out to the summer, and just taking that. I'm not as up in arms about letting him go for nothing, to be quite honest with you. Because especially I don't know how many teams were able to absorb him or give much for him anyway. So I can accept taking that gamble. Waiting on Siakam, like once Fred left, they should have initiated that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine. You want to give it one last chance with Poeltl and then take it apart. That's fine. But as soon as he got the $42 million, I think that was pretty much it.
So there's the thing. Here's the thing, right? So you make that acquisition last year with Poeltl. You get through the rest of the season. You saw what you got. Fred left. I think the onus was on him to move him at that point. Like at the very least, okay, not last year's trade deadline. Okay, we get that. But in the offseason, he definitely should have been moved, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's for sure what was going to happen. And it didn't. And I'm thinking Pascal probably thought the same. And I don't know. It dragged on, and the season came like I don't know. I was just
another thing. What I didn't like Messiah apologizing for not communicating and this. I'm like, he's a big boy. He's Bates. I don't like to always just say, well, athletes aren't human. They make millions of dollars. But I'm like, okay, what's there to communicate? You know the deal. You're not. 100 times more than what we know, and we knew that it was going to come apart. It was going to end. Like for these players, sometimes will say, "Oh, well, they didn't communicate. I'm hurt by this or come across." I'm like, dude, come on. You know the deal. It's cold. It's a cold business. And then you can't be cold and not say anything and act as if something's going to happen. And then bam.
Yeah.
be all upset and decide. Anyways, yeah, it's stupid. It was a mismanaged.
Let's move to today. Recap the deals for today. Hold on. Let me pull them up just to remember them.
So they acquired Ochai, Kelly Olynyk, and in exchange they gave up Otto Porter Jr., one of those draft picks, and who else was it? I'm missing.
Kyra Lewis.
Excuse me. He will
so
be
the
missed.
Interesting thing is, why did they structure the trade the way they did, giving away a draft pick?
Yeah. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Agbaji.
Ochai, just say Ochai.
Ochai. I apologize if you're listening. He was drafted 15th 2 years ago.
Wow.
So would you rather pick in the mid-20s in a weak draft with a first rounder, or maybe take a young player that has upside, that's been in the league a year and a half? He may not have necessarily met expectations yet from coming out of college. I mean, he was viewed as a really good 3-and-D guy, and he hasn't hit threes consistently at the NBA level. I think, in fairness to him, Utah is loaded with backcourt players that get significant minutes. You got Sexton, you got Keontae George, who they just drafted. You have Chris Dunn, who gets minutes. You have Jordan Clarkson, who gets minutes. Talen Horton, all these guys average more than 20 minutes a game. So it really limited his opportunity for Agbaji to grow. So there's a reasonable. It's reasonable as to why he may not have hit that ceiling. So you get a young player in the league a year and a half. You can put him into the rotation. Profiles as a 3-and-D guy. Will fit. All of a sudden, this team has a lot of guys who can shoot. When 6 months ago we had
zero. Yeah,
we had no one, and
we had Grady Dick, who couldn't even stay on the floor.
He was too weak to even play. So, I like it. I'd rather get a mid first rounder from 2 years ago than have a late first rounder this year. Lewis, I don't think they had any need for.
No,
playing in the G League. Otto Porter, even he was healthy this year, and they had just benched him because they were going with younger guys. Utah's perspective, they can get an asset. They get another pick. They might Porter, if they're going to be on the fringes of the playoff race, if they want to use him, get some spacing out there, he could help. I do wonder, though, because one thing about Utah is that Danny Ainge is a very, very shrewd evaluator. I mean, nobody's 100%, but for him to give up on for him to trade such a young player now, and when your primary return is a pick late in the first round of a weak draft, you have to wonder, is maybe was he overvalued coming out of the draft? Because why could they gave him up for so little? So that's the question I would ask if you want to look at the downside. But on paper, I think it was a good deal because they didn't give up anything. They didn't give up anything they wanted to keep around anyways, and they got a young player that they can really take a chance to develop.
What's your letter grade?
I gave it a B+ because they didn't give away anybody or anything that made me think, should we have kept them, or should we have kept that asset?
Yeah.
No, I mean, these were the guys they had to get rid of, right? I mean, they had to move these guys. So getting a young guy back as opposed to keeping a pick, which now we know is probably going to be a very weak draft class.
Oh, and we didn't even mention Olynyk. Toronto Kelly's Toronto's own. So
yep,
they have two centers when they went almost 2 years without one. He's a little different. I mean, he can shoot, so he can space the floor. Again, another guy that can space the floor with Scotty.
Pass.
I read this stat. He's averaging 3.5 assists coming off the bench per game. That's third in the NBA.
Yeah.
Yeah, defense isn't great, but right now they're not really defending anyways. Toronto guy, reason they're likely going to extend him, so it's not like he is an expiring deal, but he has a pretty high, so his cap hold is pretty high at about 18 million. So if they don't extend him before the end of the year and he's extension eligible, then they're going to have to keep that cap hold on the books entering free agency unless they extend him. He's making 12. Given his age, it's not unreasonable to assume that he will make less than 12 after this year. So if you could re-sign him to like 2 years between 16 and 20 million total, for a good backup center that can do a lot of things and come off your bench, and a Toronto guy who wants to be here and a good culture guy, why not? I give it a B plus because, again, for me, an A is like I say, holy shit, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that, but hey.
But what else would you expect from Otto Porter Jr. and Kyra Lewis?
Well,
what
I
else
wouldn't expect anything more. But for me to give an A, they have to surpass expectations. Like, that's my point. In my grading scale, if I'm going to give a trade an A, I have to think like, oh shit, they did better than I thought.
Like a Bargnani level fleecing.
Yeah, like for me, a B is like, all right, like they did really well here.
So I don't know how to grade this as a letter grade, because just thinking about it now, like a C plus for me when I was in school was like, well, yeah, that's pretty good. I'll take it. So I'm gonna do like with the thumb. So it's kind of like not thumbs up, but like kind of like this. So a couple things. One, when I first heard it, I didn't like the fact that they were giving up the pick. Thought about it a little bit more and understood. Like you said, Pram, we're getting a guy who a couple years ago was a mid first rounder. So I like it, especially given our inability recently to find value in the draft. I didn't, and like I said before, I didn't really like the picks that we got in the previous trades because I wasn't confident in our ability to find talent. Which is funny because at one point, that was our strength. The only thing is that if you think like in terms of the trust the process Sixers, more bullets in the chamber would have been better because at least maybe you hit on something. So there's that, right? But I don't mind Agbaji. I've seen flashes of him. I'm not going to say I've seen a lot of him. I've watched maybe 4 or 5 Jazz games. He's always like never stood out, but he's done things where I'm like, oh, okay, that was an interesting play. That was a good play. Defensively, shooting, I think, what is he, mid 30s threes?
Mid 30s.
330, I think.
Yeah. So there's potential there because I think a couple years in college he was at 40%. I know it's a closer line and all that, but there was always the thought that he could be a shooter. The thing is, listening to the Jazz podcast, the Jazz, it was David Locke from Locked On Jazz, was talking about it, and he was kind of alluding to the fact that they felt that they got the better of this trade because they saw value in that late first rounder. And I didn't think about it, but now that you mention it, Pram, like they are good evaluators of talent there. They've had some success with their draft picks, and you're right. Maybe there's something that just wasn't there with Agbaji. So that's why I'm kind of like, I'm interested to see what's happening. I want to see where this goes. And I know Bobby Webster kind of put it as like, they want to really give the kids a chance to play. They want to give the young guys a chance. And to be honest with you, Agbaji's not even that young. He spent 4 years in college with another 2 years. So what is he, 25?
He is born in April of 2000, so he's 23. He'll be 24 in a couple of months.
So he's not that young. He was a 4-year college player. Fine. Let's see what he gets us. Kelly is interesting, and I know they want guys who want to be here. They want to put a good foundation around the young guys to kind of help bring them up. And I think that was the idea with, like, when they brought Garrett Temple in. You always want to have those vets. And I've always liked Olenek as a player. Even watching him for Canada, the thing that I like about Olenek is you give him the ball right at the free throw line, and he can make some really good passes. So it'll be nice to watch him play. I just want to see good basketball. Like it's been a couple years of just watching garbage, right? I just want to see good basketball, and hopefully that comes back. But honestly, like when we think about it, and I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but like I look at the future, and you got RJ quickly and Scotty as like your core three. That to me doesn't give me a lot of reason for positivity. I'm sorry, it doesn't. I want to love Scotty. I like his personality. I like all. I just there are things that just drive me crazy about him.
Well, he has the chance to play through it, so get ready for some. It could be good basketball at times and entertaining, but frustrating, and that's how they're going to write it out.
Yeah.
You bring up some valid points about the Utah side. I mean, I don't know. I think it's worth it because the two players, zero value. And I'd rather have a young player who has a year and a half in the league that may have been not fully developed because of his team roster than a late pick in that first round. So I don't know. Some of just for the record, I think some of those Locked On podcasts are extremely homerish. Like, oh
For
man,
sure. I think any podcast. Like, I mean, we've been super homerish before too. I was super high on Malachi Flynn, and look where he ended up. Right. So there's definitely an element of that, but it's just Utah's had a history of drafting well and developing guys, and like you said, like the fact that they're not willing to see through that process is interesting. I wonder what the Jazz are doing right now, to be honest with you. But I mean, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different management team now, although I think they did well in Boston for the most part, so we can't complain. It's funny how we quickly forget how good we were at that at one point.
I know.
It's amazing. I mean, we got Scotty, but then other than that, from 2019 to now, we got Scotty, and the jury's still out on Grady. Looked better since he's come back from his G League / conditioning stint.
Yeah.
But interesting that they keep his minutes low. I don't know if he's strong enough yet to play a full 30. I think that they keep him at that 17 level.
So let me ask you guys something. So I don't know. One of you mentioned that they want to let I think Bobby Webster said, right? I think Ron, you mentioned that he wants to let the kids play, right?
Yeah.
Are we just talking about this season? There's a lot of guys who you want to see some development. And next year, if you do want to take a step forward, you just can't keep running out the same guys and see what these guys do, right? Like, how quickly do you have to make up your mind on some of these guys?
So the way he put it in his press conference was they want to let it play out. They wanted to give them a good runway this season to see how they play together. And I think that includes like Gary in that, right? Mm-hmm. They want to see how everybody fits together, and then they got to make some decisions. There's obviously still we haven't talked about it yet, but there's still the Bruce Brown decision because there's something to do there. There's money that you can potentially move with Boucher still. And I still think Gary's going to be an interesting decision too, because like does he timeline wise he kind of fits in, right? He's still young. It's sometimes easy to forget that, but I mean you guys know I don't love Gary. Sorry Gary. I know you're listening, but
he's the problem I have with Gary is that we've had him since 2021. About 3 years ago we got him, and I still don't know. Like I still need to see more, because there's times where he's great and he could lock a guy down, he can clamp a guy on D when he has to, and there's other times where he's out of position. He's extremely streaky with his scoring. Like he'll have a 2-point game followed up with a 25-point game. But then he's also shooting over 40% from the three right now.
Yeah,
and but then there's other times where he's just like, I don't know, when he his off the ball defense continues to leave a lot to be desired. But then again, this is the league of shooting. You're looking at, if you're building around Scotty, it's the Giannis LeBron model. Just surround them with shooters and give them space. So I don't know what to make of the Gary thing. I mean, it's interesting that after 3 years we still don't know what he is, because he's so streaky, and they've never quite had the right roster set up around him, and Nurse ran hot and cold with him, and Nurse wasn't communicative at last year. I mean, I think Nurse just checked out.
He checked out,
and he would just communicate via the media, so that wasn't the right environment for him or any other player that's in that stage of their career. So I still don't know. And in terms of like what they're going to do, like I mean, Bobby had said like, hey, they want to see how the team plays the rest of the year, so they can use that to inform what they do in the off season.
Yeah,
who they target, trades, free agents, whatever that may be. It's not a deep free agent class. I mean, you got OG and Siakam, who obviously they traded, so they're not going to give them the market value. Or, I mean, Tobias Harris, Klay Thompson, I don't see them coming here. James Harden, like Gordon Hayward, you wouldn't want. And then you got like Kyle and DeMar, and they don't fit unless one of them decides to retire and wants to come back to finish it off. But I mean, it's not a deep class. So when free agent classes are weak, it means that the trade market gets active again in the offseason. And it will actually be more active than what we saw today, because I don't think we saw any big move the needle type deals, except maybe New York getting Bogdanovic.
Yeah,
but,
they did well for themselves, actually.
They did well today, yeah. But I think most of it's more like accounting deals, like getting, like getting under the tax, saving some money, maybe just offloading a few back of the roster guys that might give a contender some depth, and you just acquire a few assets. You're not.
That's a great segue, by the way, into the last deal that they made, the Schroeder.
More than an accounting deal in my mind. You guys know how I feel about Schroeder.
No, yeah, and honestly, so what is it? Schroeder for Dinwiddie? Was it
Schroeder and Thad Young for Dinwiddie?
Right. I forgot about that. I do like having Thad around. I thought he was one of those guys that. So I'm going to call this an F deal because I don't really give an F about it. Honestly, I don't like losing Thad because I felt like Thad was one of those guys, like kind of coach on the floor. You really see how things are different when he's on the floor, putting people in the right place. I liked having Thad, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? No. But getting Dinwiddie and then just waiving him, like, I get it. It's a money deal, but that does nothing for me as a fan. Nothing.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I think
nothing.
the biggest thing is, to me, the question is this: do you want to? Is it worth losing Thad? Are you okay losing Thad for the last 25 games of the season so they don't have to have Schroeder next year? To me, that's a resounding yes. Because as you guys know, I've never liked Schroeder. And maybe I was a little hard on him. I did not like him starting. Even though the efficiency wasn't as bad if you look at the numbers, but if you actually watch the play, yes, he made the pass, but he was always a second too late.
Yeah.
He was always a second too late. Like he held on to the ball too long and then would make a last minute pass. And it put Siakam in a bad position, Scotty in a bad position. And they still played well and bailed him out a lot of the times. Like I don't think he thought he was bigger than I came here to be the leader. Like, bro, no, you are not a leader. You don't have the right to, you haven't done anything. You are a good bench, like a rotation piece coming off a bench as a role player. You are not a leader. You are not going to lead a team. You've been in the league 10 years. You are what you are. I don't care what you did with FIBA or whatever. It's a totally different set of circumstances. You are not that in the NBA. I did not like how he wearing the shades when talking to the media. You are not LeBron James or James Harden. Like, you're not that level player. You don't take your glasses off and be professional. I did not like how he even questioned the whole, oh, well, we don't have the camaraderie on this team. I'm like, well, it's you. You're the one that's coming in saying, well, I'm going to lead these guys. You've done nothing to warrant making such comments.
And then there were reports like he was unhappy with his bench role as well, right? So
yeah,
they just have to get out of a terrible situation.
I came here for somebody. You haven't reached this level in this league where you can say, I came here for somebody. No. You're not that level of player. Like, you got a 2-year deal. Good for you. You've had a nice, like, extended career, but he thought he was bigger than he was. I didn't like him. He was perfectly fine off the bench, but I would rather have the flexibility. And if that means not having Thad for the rest of the season, so be it. Dinwiddie, I mean, they had to do the buyout because, number one, I think that he's entering free agency. I think he wants to showcase himself by signing on with the contender and he's had some good playoff runs. So playing with a team that's going to make a playoff run. And number two, do they really want to pay a $1.5 million games played bonus when he played all those games with another team? So I think that it's an accounting deal, but I give it a B+ because it gives them more cap flexibility in the off season. And I view it as they come out better off what you have to look at it is, are they better off or worse off given the situation, given the state of their team and the direction they're heading? And I think that saving that $13 million next year makes them better off.
Yeah, and also when you look at it from just like Bobby's comments of, we want to give the kids a chance to play together. I keep calling them kids, but the young guys, you want to give the young guys a chance to play together and see what you have there. Having Dennis Schroeder on the roster kind of works against that, because we've seen on many occasions where, I'm not going to say he's out for himself, but he's not necessarily making the best basketball play. So I do like that they made that move. I mean, selfishly, I would have liked to just see. I like Dinwiddie. I don't know why. I've always liked Dinwiddie. I would have liked to see him on the team, but like honestly, it the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. I just want to see what our young guys can do. To be honest with you, because we've been saying this for a couple of years where we don't want to get stuck in that limbo, and like it felt like that's where we were gonna end up had we not made all these, like, what was it, four trades in 6 weeks. So let me ask this question: are we better off today than we were a month and a half ago before we made these deals?
I think in a way, yes, because at least you know what the direction is, right? Like, you were somewhere in between before. Like, you're not good enough to compete. You're just somewhere in the middle, which is at times probably the worst place to be in NBA, right? So, and that seemed like the ceiling, maybe a little bit better. I don't know, but definitely they weren't going to be the top 2-3 teams in the East. So
No.
So I think at least this is their direction. If it fails, it fails, but at least there's a clear sign that the status quo wasn't going to work. So I think they're still better off from that standpoint. They have lots of cap space. We've talked about the second apron cut. So who knows, right?
But cap space cannot score points for you. We're not gonna I'm just joking.
I know.
But like, I just hope something is done with that cap space. I know. Like we talked about it. We got the Bruce Brown contract that we can potentially do something with in the offseason. Boucher, like there's still something we can do there. But like, honestly, how many times have there been teams that have cleared out cap space and have done nothing with it? I just don't want to be that either, because we know, and Pramit, you mentioned the class is not great this offseason. But I mean, that doesn't mean that, we talked about this in our group chat a bunch of times. Like, there's still the two things of, there's the disgruntled player that hopefully can fit.
There's always someone who's disgruntled. So
yeah, or the distressed assets, right? Somebody who kind of isn't fitting anymore. I'm not going to say Trae Young, but I mean, it would be interesting just to move to do something else. It's not going to work. But I'm just saying, like, that the distressed asset, disgruntled player are still possibilities. I just don't want to I don't have enough confidence in the core that we have right now to move forward and say, this is it.
It's not enough yet. I think on paper they don't have enough there, but I think that we need to just really see what they do. I mean, we need to see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think to answer your question, I mean, obviously hard to. I mean, I would say definitely. I mean, they're worse off in the short term because, like, and especially given the fact that you didn't get enough for Siakam. In the short term, they're worse off, but they have more of a clean slate now. They can now and they've all those years with Masai here, they've never really had a clean slate. Like they've always had like a core group, and they just augment around them. It wasn't until DeMar that they really decided to blow that up. But
yeah,
I still think they're better off because you got a more restrictive CBA coming up. So there was a time where players may not have signed here. Not necessarily. I don't fully buy into nobody wants to come to Toronto. It's like if it's Toronto or another team and the other team, it's not having to change countries, gives you less headaches, you're probably going to go to the other team. But now with fewer teams that have cap space, fewer teams with flexibilities, with the first apron and the second apron, which become more and more restrictive, Toronto may be a place to go because that's the only place they can get a deal or get a deal that they want. Teams may be looking at offloading a piece and not just like the crap on the back end of the roster that are overpaid, but maybe a good rotation piece. You have the option to rent cap space if you want to acquire like some picks, even if they're second rounders, to go along with it. So they now have a little bit more of a clean slate. It's a little misleading just with the cap space because they have to extend quickly.
Yeah, and that's coming up soon, right?
That's coming up. There's likely going to be an Olenek extension. No, that's not going to be a big extension, but it's still going to be there.
And you got still Scotty at some point.
Scotty next year is his final deal on the year on the rookie deal. I mean, even if you want to if you're going to Jordan Nora, if you want to, it's not going to be a lot. He's making something like 3 now, but it's not going to be a big raise, but still is a there's some of these guys you're going to have to pay or extend.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as much room, and you don't know what happens with Gary because the other option is you lose him for nothing. So you may have to give depending on the situation, you may have to extend him, but maybe he may not get as much money as you thought, given that it's money's a little bit tighter this offseason. I mean, the contender that has cap space is Philly, and I don't know if Gary wants to go play for Nurse again. So I would take that off the table, but you never know. I mean, he could just say, whatever, I'll just take the money and go. But that's a possibility. So some of that money will be eaten up with those extensions, but they still have room to maneuver. The Brown contract, interestingly now, because they'll actually be able to aggregate it with other deals if they need to. In the offseason that they couldn't do now. So there's a little more flexibility there to exercise and move them in the offseason. Boucher, I mean, it would have been really different. They would have had to add some sort of a future second to incentivize the team to take him because he doesn't have any value right now. So they'll have to. Maybe they just have to ride it out next season and keep him, or unless he gets back in the rotation and plays well. But there's more flexibility than they've had in recent years for sure.
But think about it though, like Boucher and Brown, now that you can aggregate, gets you into what, the mid-30s?
Yep.
So I mean, going back to that discussion about disgruntled player. I'm not saying you're gonna have to obviously throw in some picks to make the deal a little bit more interesting, but there's that, right?
Yep. I mean, when we're getting into speculative territory here, but I mean, let's say a megastar became available, you could aggregate with RJ. So. There's a lot they can do now that they couldn't do before. So from that, whereas they've been a relatively inactive team and just extending guys and adding at the fringes the last few years and to their detriment because it worked in the past, it hasn't worked now because they just haven't developed their young guys in the same manner that they were able to before. They can be active. and that's good.
Yeah. So we're getting close to an hour. Any final thoughts? Actually, let me ask this one question. Just as a fan, are you? And I'll ask this to Azam and then Pramit. As a fan, are you excited? Are you gonna do you think you'll tune out for the rest of the year, or are you gonna be interested to see what the rest of the season looks like?
Okay, I'm not excited because it's gonna be ugly basketball at times, maybe, but I am looking forward to seeing some of these guys play. Like, how do they gel in, and like if they can work together or be a part of the system. So I am looking forward to it. We'll see how it goes. I'm not going to buy tickets and go to the games though.
No.
I am intrigued. And you know what? I may be reaching here. If everybody's healthy and they click, and I'm trying not to be optimistic fanboy here, but
you're going to be anyways.
Play-in isn't out of the equation. I'll put it that way. If they're 4 games out of the 10 seed, and they have, just looking ahead at the schedule, there's quite a few winnable games in there. And
Can I say this is why I hate the friggin' play-in? Like, I get it. I get why they did it. I don't like that. Like, we're not good, and we're still pretending like we have something to play for.
I'll say this though, given their situation with their first rounder, because like if they didn't, San Antonio didn't get their first rounder, if it was outside of the top 6, tank it, because even if it's a weak draft, the top 5 or 6, you could still get somebody good.
Yeah, no.
But this year, given like do you really want 10? I mean, I'd rather just have them give them 10.
Yeah.
And you could at least with these young guys get some meaningful games in and see how they respond to that. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, play in and they can get in, and you never know, they can go to the Final Four. Like, no way. I'm just thinking from the mindset of development, of having them play games that matter, that have that the outcome of the game matters, where there's a consequence to losing and there's a benefit to winning, rather than just playing out, treating these games as practice.
Fair point. All right, so we're really close to an hour. Any last thoughts before we end this?
No, I think this was a lot of fun doing it after a long time. So we should probably make this more regular.
We always say
actually, you know what? I mean, we talk a lot about. Obviously, we'll continue to talk Raptors and Blue Jays as well. But I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit. I don't know if probably you guys don't follow, but the AFC Asian Cup that's going on. There's some really intriguing storylines that have come out, and I think it would be worth checking into it. Like South Korea, Jurgen Klinsmann, as usual, like playing zombie football. He's the manager of South Korea, and they lost to Jordan. So Jordan's going to play Qatar in the final. And Qatar is going to try to become the first team in 20 years to be repeat champions. So, which is a bit of a redemption for them after such a disastrous World Cup performance.
Yeah.
Because being Asian champions, they had slightly better hopes for themselves. But there are a lot of very interesting storylines. So Jordan itself, South Korea, once again, Son can't win the trophy with Spurs. He can't win the trophy with South Korea.
Yeah. He's the problem.
He's the problem. Klinsmann, apparently he carried a staff of 35 people with him, including analytics and everything. And then they just kept surviving in the competition because of last-minute geniuses from the players. So there's some interesting storylines. Maybe we can discuss that as well.
Yeah. Let's. When's the final?
Sunday, 10:30 in the morning.
Oh, that's not bad. I thought it was going to be earlier. That's actually not bad.
I'm trying to figure out who's going to broadcast, because I've been just watching like videos on YouTube after the fact for the most part. But I think CBS Sports maybe, or one of those streaming platforms.
Mm-hmm. I'll see if I can find it.
One last question: who wins the Super Bowl?
You go first, Azam.
I think 49ers can win, but I think at the end of the day, I think Chiefs are going to win the day.
If the Chiefs win, we all lose. I'm going to say the Niners, just because I don't want to hear the Taylor Swift stuff. Not trying to be a hater, but I'm just
okay. That's just gone insane. That's just a little too.
That's out of control. But I think the Chiefs are going to win this one. I don't know why. I guess it's the Mahomes factor.
Yeah.
And Andy Reid is becoming a bizarro Bill Belichick, right? Like he's becoming that. Like he's collecting all these rings towards the end of his career.
Yeah.
So
Goat. The GOAT.
I mean, this is going to be the third, right? So
yeah. And how many has he been in?
3, I think. Have they lost the Super Bowl?
This is his fourth.
No, but he was there with Philly, wasn't he? With McNabb?
Yeah, he went one.
Oh, Andy Reid, you're talking about? Okay,
Yeah.
Andy Reid was with Philly,
and they lost. I think they lost with Philly.
Was it once or twice?
I think once, maybe.
We have the internet at our fingertips, and we're all just like, as if we're gonna remember.
Wikipedia. Let's check his record. Lost to New England in the Super Bowl in 2004. No, he went once with Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he's won. He's gone 3 times so far with Kansas City, won 2 and lost 1, and this is his 4th with Kansas City, so 5th overall. Well,
I don't want to see. I don't want to see another win for him, man. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be rooting hard for the Niners. I don't even like the Niners, but I'm going to be rooting hard for them because I just don't want to see Kansas City win. I can't. I don't want to hear the media afterwards. I don't want to like see the constant like Taylor Swift shots. Who's the halftime performance?
I have no idea. The thing about Taylor Swift is like even Patrick Mahomes is like an afterthought. Like you're like the biggest name among all athletes.
He likes
like,
it that way. That's why it's all at work. Like it's all planned. Take the spotlight off of Mahomes because he probably prefers that.
Don't even get me started on Mahomes.
And then he's going to come out.
Yeah, but I mean, he's still like regardless, he's still a great quarterback. It's just
I completely. You guys know how I am. I'm an ultimate hater. Ultimate hater. Brady, Jordan, like
players. You hate Jordan.
Have we never gone through this? I despise Jordan.
No, I
like Jordan.
I didn't know that. This is news to me.
How has this never come up in the LeBron at one point? Like I mean, it wasn't.
I knew LeBron. You knew Vince. We knew Brady.
I mean, we never got past Vince, so I don't think Jordan ever came up.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. As soon as we get into Vince Carter, the conversation ends because I go off the deep end. But yeah, no, Jordan. Here's the story, and we're running way over time. But Jordan, I was a Heat fan growing up as a kid before the Raptors were a thing. So like a bunch of and also a Magic fan when I was younger, like Magic Johnson. So Jordan was always the adversary. Yeah, no, Jordan is just he's on my shit list.
That's very interesting.
No.
Speaking of Jordan, I know we're over time. Did you see the Jude Bellingham thing?
No.
Adidas is trying to replicate the Jordan logo with Jude Bellingham and create a separate line. He's not there yet. He's a phenomenal talent, but
I'll say the smartest thing that Adidas did with Jude Bellingham is put the Predators on him.
Yes.
Because those were iconic boots back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I have a pair of the later Predators, and putting him in them, and I think they did a blackout version as well. Like it'll definitely sell, especially with the success he's having.
Mm-hmm.
It's you
know his celebration with his arms raised. They're gonna make a logo out of it.
Okay, but not like the dunking.
No, he's not dunking. He's just celebrating. So that's a separate line that they're going to create, apparently.
No, that's a good move. That's a good move. I think the last time they really did it, like Messi had his line. It wasn't super successful. Messi didn't even wear the shoes. Messi never wore his own shoes. And then before that, I don't know who would it have been. Beckham?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm surprised Cristiano CR7 didn't have one. Or did he?
He did. No, he did. He
did, right? Yeah. I didn't.
Yeah, with Nike.
But was it successful?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, super successful.
Okay.
Him, Neymar.
Neymar I knew, yeah.
Yeah. The real Ronaldo before that.
Yes.
I'm sure there's somebody in between there that had, but yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, we'll do this again. I don't know what we're going to talk next time. I don't know when the next thing is going to be, but it shouldn't be a year. It definitely shouldn't be a year.
Well, you can talk Cody Bellinger and Ross Atkins. So
yeah, I mean, we're due for a Jays episode because we got to talk about the like we had a conversation about the Vlad stuff and just like the inactivity of the Blue Jays over the past like a few months. I mean, they were in on Ohtani though. That was super exciting, and I remember the tickets on StubHub just shooting through the roof. I don't know what are the tickets
and
at right now.
Forced me to buy a season pack.
Did you do it
that day? I ended up buying.
Oh shit! Oops. I thought you didn't go. I thought you didn't execute on it.
No, I did.
1 or 2 tickets.
They have those multi-game passes, right? So like I think 10 games.
Oh, but not a full
No,
season.
No, not a full season. No.
Okay.
In all honesty, I mean, I do end up going to multiple games, so that's fine. But
yeah,
still,
I got to take my daughter. I haven't been to a Jays game since the last time we went. When was that? 2 years ago?
Yes.
Are the Marlins in town this year? We got to check that.
That would be fun. You know, you should always go to if you're taking your kids, take them to the Canada Day game. It's a lot of fun. They have kids activity. I mean, they have a lot of kids activities nowadays, anyways. So
the tickets are usually harder to come by for the Canada Day games.
Yes, but I mean, they have a lot of they do face painting and stuff. Like kids have a really good time.
That sounds like I'm going to be there a little bit longer than I want to be, though.
That is true. But what I do with the kids is just buy the cheapest ticket available, and because you're not sitting in your seats at that point.
No. My daughter will not.
They got the Marlins for the final weekend of the season. So
get out of here! Really? Here?
Yeah, end of September.
You know what the problem is? I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be in Ottawa.
When are you moving?
Well, let's talk about this later. But
yeah, let's talk. Yeah, let's just.
All right,
let's have house party where we're gonna wrap it up and we continue on for another 20 minutes.
All right, let's sign off. Perfect way to sign off since we've had a lot of playoff talk. We'll and with the Super Bowl coming, we'll end it off with Jim Mora.
What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
That's going to be the Raptors. Believe me. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time.
4 viewers.